Good day everyone. Today we'll discuss a new topic which is the GRASPS model, a framework by Wiggins and McTighe that helps us design authentic performance assessment. So by the end of this lesson, you'll understand how GRASPS makes classroom learning and more meaningful and connected to real life application. So let's begin by looking at what we aim to achieve in this short discussion. So here's our objective. So feel free to pause and read the objectives. So before we go deeper, let's understand why this model was developed. So the GRASS model was designed to make assessment more authentic and realistic. Unlike traditional assessment often focuses on recalling. So what students remember. So GRASS shifts from the focus towards application. So which means allowing students to show what they can actually do, what they know. So through this approach, learners connect knowledge to real-life situations, promoting critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving. To appreciate how it works, we'll now move from the idea of recall to performance. So in traditional testing, success means repeating information correctly. Unlike in authentic assessment, success means demonstrating understanding in action. So GRASS encourage teachers to design performance tasks that mirrors the work of the real professionals. So this approach makes students active participants in their learning rather than passive test takers. So now, let's decode the meaning of each letters in the GRASP. So, the GRASP stands for the goal, the role, the audience, the situation, product or performance, and lastly, the standard for success. So these 6 elements form a complete structure for designing authentic tasks. They answer the essential questions of what, who, for whom, why, how, and how well in any performance assessment. So let's explore each component in sequence using one connected example. So the first element is the goal. It defines the purpose of the task, or the intended result, or the big idea. For instance, suppose the class is asked to create a community disaster preparedness campaign. So the goal is not just simply to design posters or presentations. It is to educate and protect the community through awareness. So the goal gives direction and meaning to the entire performance. So once the goal is clear, we determine the perspective from which student will act, which is their role. So the role identifies the position or responsibility that the learners takes in completing the task. In the same example, students might act as a disaster preparedness advocates. Assuming a role helps them think and behave like professional, deepening their understanding and engagement. It changes the way they view the problem and approach the solution. So after defining the role, we simplify for whom the performance is intended. So the audience. So the audience refers to the group who will view, use, benefit from the work. It could be classmates, school administrators, local residents, or even community officials. Knowing the audience determines the style, tone, and format of the product. For an example, a community directed a local leaders who use formal language and reliable data, while one for peers might use simple visuals or slogans. So with the audience identified, we set the context or the real-world challenge. comes to the situation. So the situation represents the background or real life issue. So the task responds to. So it adds authenticity by linking the classroom activity to community needs or global concerns. Continuing our example, so let's have an example here in Kabacan. So Kabacan experienced frequent flooding due to limited awareness and preparation. So students address this problem through their project, connecting science and social responsibility. So next, students that demonstrate their learning through the product or performance. So the product or the performance is the tangible evidence of learning. So it basically says that what students produce or do to show their understanding. So this could be a campaign, research report, video, prototypes, or even a community presentation. So the product provides visual proof that learning has been applied to meaningful tasks. It shifts assessment from memorization to creating and doing. To evaluate, and lastly, to evaluate the product fairly, we establish the final element, which is the standards for success. So the standard for success outline this or the criteria by which performance will be judged. So this may include accuracy, creativity, organization, and the impact. So clear standards ensure that both teachers and students understand what equality work looks like. So rubrics are built from these standards, guiding learners as they plan, perform, and self-assess for work. So now we view all 6 elements. Let's see how GRASPS can appear in different subject areas. So GRASPS applies to every learning area. In mathematics, for example, students might design a subtraction lesson using manipulatives to explain the concept to your younger learners. While in science, they could create troubleshooting guide for simple electric circuits. So let's have in social studies, they might relate geography and economy to a graphic organizer. And lastly, in foreign language, they could develop guidebook explaining proper use of past tense forms. Across this discipline or subject areas, the model ensures that this assessment measure understanding through performance. To reinforce your learning, let's summarize the key ideas through a quick reflection. So through the GRASPS model, assessment becomes an opportunity to show real understanding. It shows students to apply knowledge, perform roles, and create outcomes that matter beyond the classroom. So authentic assessment is not just about memorizing answers, but demonstrating thinking, reasoning, and creativity. So finally, let's consolidate everything we discussed. To summarize, GRASPS stands for the goal, which is the purpose of the task, the role, the learner's position or perspective, the audience, the people the work is meant for. Second is situation, the real world context or challenge. Next is the product or the performance, which is the evidence of learning. And lastly, the standards for success. So the criteria for evaluation. So when these 6 elements are integrated, assessment moves beyond testing recall to measuring deep understanding. So GRASPS transforms learning into an authentic learning experience where knowledge meets application. Thank you for listening. Remember, meaningful learning happens when the students perform with understanding, and the GRASPS model helps us make that possible. Thank you very much and have a great night.